Well, joining me now is the broadcaster Tricia Goddard and Professor of Politics and author Matt Goodwin. OK, Tricia, you're the case for the defence. Off you go. Am I wrong about this point? I don't want to get into the minutiae of the individual cases. One of them involves the Mirror Group, and I'm sure he'll have a good old whack at me while he's doing it. I don't want to get into that because we can't for the legal reasons. Yeah. However, on the general point I'm making, which is, yeah, of course, as a member of the royal family, he's had his private life raked over the coals for decades. Of course, they all have. And in return, the others all accept that the deal is that you get the palaces, the servants, the fancy life, you're the biggest stars in the world, and the oppressor like an annoying buzzard on the backside of a bison. Harry sees it in a much more malevolent way. But then, of course, comes the hypocrisy of the book, the Netflix series, everything else, where he seems to just be relentlessly invading his own privacy, that of his family, that of his friends, that of people he's met on his life. How can you have your cake, your privacy cake, and eat it?
Well, I'm in a difficult position because I could say to a much lesser degree, and I'm nothing like Harry as far as profile is concerned, but I would be the same because, for instance, when I was in hospital in 2008, I think you know one of the reasons I moved to the States was I didn't have any privacy there. I didn't have privacy when I was in hospital. I had journalists trying to pretend to deliver flowers. My kids had to go through security and what have you. Now, I'd written a book about my life and I talked about my life in minutiae, and yet there was a line I didn't think it was fair to cross. Now, we all have our own lines and our own boundaries, and they might not make sense to other people. But I think, as you're right in that. If we feel we're controlling the narrative, if I wanted to talk about my hospital experience, which I did to a certain amount of degree, that's fine. If somebody wants to be underhand and pretend to be delivering flowers and get surreptitious pictures of me when I'm going through chemotherapy, that is something else. So I think this whole court case, I think, is the difference between Harry having, and you're right there, control, and alleged underhand methods of people getting another narrative. I think we all have a public face, we all have a private face.
OK. Matthew Goodwin, your response to this. Does Harry have any right to privacy now? Can he go and have court battles over his private life, given what he's now done to his private life?
Well, I think as a couple, they've made a conscious decision to put themselves out there. And I think there's something else that Harry can't control, which is what do people think about him. And if you look at the polls on Harry and Meghan, and I spend a lot of my time looking at the polls, well, I've never seen a brand collapse this hard, this quickly. Since the end of last year, both Harry and Meghan are down 40 points. We've just had a poll in America which shows he's less popular now than Prince Andrew in America. Right. So as a brand,
I think anecdotally, I've been bouncing this latest thing off people, and they're like, let me get this straight. He's flown all the way from LA for a part of the process he doesn't need to be at, just to be in the papers, going through the front entrance, and he's laughing. Yeah. What kind of thing is he thinking he's representing here? What image is he putting forward?
I think they think they're the underdogs going up against the system.
But the public won't see that. They're in the middle of a cost of living crisis we haven't had in 100 years. I don't think there's going to be any sympathy. Honestly, I don't. For Harry right now.
Is he looking for sympathy? I mean, he's not the only one who's made...
Well, he's looking for vengeance.
Well, he's not the only one who's very visible in this. And as you mentioned, there are other people, David Furnish,
Elton John and Doreen Lawrence.
Doreen Lawrence? Yeah. If Doreen Lawrence is pretty much saying exactly the same thing as Harry, and I'm sorry, with Doreen Lawrence, that infuriates me. Now, everybody is saying the same thing.
Well, on Doreen Lawrence, we have to be clear that the Mail have issued a robust denial of all these allegations, and in particular about Doreen Lawrence.
I agree.
And there is a messy situation involving some of the whistleblowers now recanting what they said. Yeah. So let's wait and see how this process goes out.
But what I'm saying is what they're saying, what they're claiming is fairly similar. Bits, you know, David Furnish, all the rest of them. So I think it is about control. And when you say about him laughing as he goes into court, I don't know why, but it brings to mind somebody else, Suella Braverman, laughing in Rwanda.
Yeah, inappropriate.
I mean, inappropriate. Sometimes people do stupid things in serious situations.
I mean, there's also a sadness here, isn't it, Matthew? And it is a sadness because he's over here and he's flown all this way to go and have his little moment in the court and in the papers because he hates the press. But he's not being seen by any of his family, it's been reported. His father doesn't want to see him. His brother doesn't want to see him.
We don't know that for a fact.
Well, it's been reported by the Telegraph, who's pretty plugged into the royals, that the king has no room in his schedule, right? If my son flew 5,000 miles to the city I was in, I'd be seeing my sons, any of them, right? So there's clearly a massive rift here. He and Meghan haven't even said if they'll go to the coronation. I don't know who they think they are to be keeping the king waiting on whether they come or not. But it just seems, again, the priorities are completely warped here.
Yeah. I feel sorry for Harry, actually. I think he's a deeply disturbed young man who needs a lot of support. And I think if you look at the therapy session that he did in the US, that is not something that I think somebody who is completely in command of their, of themselves and is getting good advice from public relations people, has a supportive team around them. I don't think that's something that a person like that would do. So when I look at him, I see someone actually who's quite lost.
Tricia,
yeah, I agree with that.
Tricia, you're an expert in people, right? You are. So you've always been great at giving people advice.
No, I agree. I actually agree with Matthew. I think the people around him have given him crap advice.
Yeah, I agree.
Really do. And also, because there's a disconnect, the people around him, a lot of them are Americans.
Well, let's be clear about when you say that. Look, I think the main driver of a lot of this is Meghan, his wife.
But even so...
But here's my point about her.
But
she's an American... Here's my point. She's an American who's probably got exactly what she wants out of it. She's living in the state she grew up in a massive mansion with hundreds of millions of dollars coming in. But I don't think she cares about the royal family or the monarchy or any of it. Why would she?
But I don't know whether that is or not. But I'm coming back to Matthew's point. The people around him, we all come up with stupid ideas now and again. If you're in the media and somebody says, oh, come on, shut up.
Yes.
There is nobody around.
I think he's got a lot of enablers. And they're fueling his kind of perpetual victimhood. And yet when I watched him marching into court the last couple of days, I don't see a victim at all. I see a victim. Do you?
I see a victim of circumstance, to echo you, of tragedy, of pain, of not knowing where they are, of being lost. And there's many people in many families.
How much can you milk that?
Yeah, I see.
When you're actually born into gigantic privilege, and when so many millions of people are going through genuine life or death hardship right now, I just think there is a very limited pool of sympathy for Prince Harry right now in this country, for watching him take on the media again and railing about privacy. People are like, hang on, hasn't he just done a book about all his private life?
Yeah, I see a symbol of everything that's wrong with our culture and, to be honest, everything that's wrong with
Well, you've written a good book about this, Values, Voice and Virtue, which touches on a lot of this, right?
Yeah, so basically it's about how have we got here as a country, how have we gone through the last 10 years of political turbulence, and my argument in a nutshell is we now have a new elite in this country that has become dangerously disconnected from the values that are held by most people out there who feel that they don't have a voice in the conversation, and they're looking at this elite embracing this radical woke ideology, and they're saying, well, what on earth is this, and why do you keep undermining the things I love, like the institution?
Well, I completely agree. You're shaking your head, but I think instinctively you know there's a bit of truth to this. This woke stuff's got completely out of hand.
I hate the misuse. We're journalists, so let's not misuse the word woke for what it was. Let's call it, I don't know what you want to call it, but young people. I think there is
not just young people.
I think there's a disconnect between I agree there's a disconnect. I think I'm generalising here between generations, which isn't very different from the days of Bill Haley and the Rockers and what have you. But there is woke to me is a word that people use when it's like a catch-all, and it's nearly always misused. I would say there's a disconnect between when you call them the elite, I'd say the politicians.
It's not just the politicians anymore, though.
At the moment, for the last 10 years, we've had the same political people in power. So if you're going to moan about immigration and everything else,
For sure. It's politicians on the left, on the right, but it's also the creative class, cultural institutions.
I also think, though, we've become, as a society, pathetically weak. And we now celebrate victimhood. And we celebrate weakness over strength and winning and ambition and aspiration. And it's making us a weak society. I really do believe that.
I don't think we're weak.
I think we are, honestly.
I don't think we're. I think there's strength and kindness.
I think Harry, in a way, personifies. He's got all this privilege, all this money. He went for freedom. He doesn't seem happy other than when he's taking on the media. And it's like, really, just get over yourself, mate. Get on with your happy life in California. Stay with your chickens. Drop the royal titles. Because why would you want titles given to you by an institution you hate so much, right? Drop it all, and then you give your kids the titles. I mean, come on. The whole thing is riddled with hypocrisy.